Hey guys, this is Jeff from Evans Tuning. In today's Daily Tune episode, we have a 2009 Chevy Cobalt SS. This car has a upgraded turbo. It's an EFR 6758. It has an upgraded front mount, intake. This car is direct fuel injection, and it has upgraded injectors. It has Opel, from an Opel, it has Opel fuel injectors. It has ZZP upgraded camshafts with a larger lobe for the direct injection fuel pump, so it's going to overdrive the pump and be able to get more out of it. It has a full turbo back exhaust, and otherwise it's a stock engine internally. And there also is meth injection, which we'll see if we get to that. But get this on the dyno, and we're going to start calibrating it. So this car actually was tuned by another shop that's in the area, and they used HP tuners. And so I hooked my HP tuners cable in and read out the file that they tuned with, compared it to a stock file, and it looks like they've changed minimal amount of things to increase the boost, tweak air fuel, tweak timing, and there wasn't a whole lot changed. And this particular car had a really nasty misfire, very light throttle and at idle. You could drive it down the road and it would miss so bad that it would actually register misfire codes on the dash. I mean, it was seeing, the miss counter count up, 50 to 100 at a time, like just driving light throttle. And it was, you felt it when you're driving. So the owner was concerned and thought there was something mechanically wrong with the car, had changed out components, trying to figure out if it was, a mechanical problem. He contacted me and brought the car in, and I spent some time before it's been even on the dyno. I spent a few hours driving it up and down the road, just trying to figure out what the actual problem was. And what I came to conclude was it was a combination of the variable cam mapping. So these have a variable intake and exhaust cam that can move, similar to like a Subaru with the AVCS or Myvec on an Evo 10. So these have variable cam, and they're also direct injection. So the variable cam was over advanced at very light throttle, and the direct injection was spraying at a bad position in its firing, and it was actually creating this misfire. So the combination between the wrong spray angle on the direct injection in that window, in that RPM window, so it's usually very light throttle, very light load, up to about 3,000 RPM, it had a very bad miss. So by changing the variable cam and the direct injection mapping, I was able to completely eliminate the misfire. So now the car runs super smooth like it is stock. So that was the first thing to do before I even put it on the dyno to tune. So now we have it on the dyno. Now I'm going to start exploiting the full throttle tuning. Notice the other shop had the commanded power enrichment or air fuel in the, I think, mid 11s. Being direct injection and being efficient, they can run much leaner than that. You can actually get into all kinds of misfiring problems running them rich. So I've already prepared a map to begin my basis of tuning for today. These are a Bosch base ECU. The previous supercharged version of the Cobalt SS was an older architecture of ECU, which was kind of antiquated and dated. It was very simple to tune. This Bosch PCM is much more complicated. It's similar to a Ford. So if things aren't happy, throttle will close, boost will drop, and on. Like if you've watched our Focus RS video, there's all of that going on when I was programming. These aren't as in depth for what can be programmed. There's not as many tables to manipulate, but the idea of how the PCM works and the logic behind it is similar. So today's goal is to try to map out the car best I can full throttle. I'm going to start with tuning fuel, getting the fuel dialed in. Then I'm going to move on to doing the variable cam, and then I'm going to try to slowly increase boost, see where our threshold is, see where I can make, and I may have to also play with the spray angle with the direct injection. There's all kinds of power to be had in that, and that's kind of like a black magic art that no one's really talking about because it's super complicated and you pretty much need a dyno to figure out. So we're gonna get into it and see what we can do today, and hopefully make some power. This flash is fast. Fucking, I don't know what I'd do if it was like right speed like fucking Fords have. I'd be here all day. I made the first, well, trying to do a baseline pull, and car went up in boost pretty high. It was about 25 pounds. I don't want to go that high that quick, so I lowered the requested load down a little bit so it'll decrease the boost to start the calibration process. I'm more interested at this point making sure the fuel is correct and then moving on to the variable cam mapping so that we can establish good spool from the turbo as good as we can mid-range and down low, and then move on to increasing the boost and playing with ignition timing. So just flashed it. We'll see how it goes now, and hopefully the boost goes down. So I just did the first baseline pull. It made 320. Boost went up to about 25, dropped off to about 20 psi. So that's going to take a little bit of adjustment and tweaking to get right. So far, so good. The previous shop that had tuned it had commanded a much richer air fuel. Being direct injection, you don't need to run it like a typical port injected engine. So they were commanding like low to mid 11 air fuel, which is way too rich, which will actually cause rich misfires on one of these engines. I commanded a power enrichment of around 12.8, 12.6 air fuel. While it sounds unsafe and it seems like it would be lean on a typical engine, on a port engine, it definitely would be. On a direct injection engine, it's not. I'm also watching a parameter called knock retard. So it's the response to knock that the ECU is seeing, and it's going to pull out timing if it doesn't like it. I was able to make that pull. I saw no knock retard. So now I know that, you know, with my baseline, I got to tweak my fuel just a little bit. It was a little bit leaner than my power enrichment target air fuel. It was like 13.0 right there. So I'm going to add a little bit of fuel. I'm going to end up probably adding a little bit of ignition timing. But before I start playing with ignition timing, I'm going to move on to variable cam, see if I can get any more response or spool out of this turbo and make it come on a little bit harder down low. You know, so make those changes, flash it, and then see what we can do. Oh yeah, that spooled it faster. Nice. So I made another pull and tweaked the air fuel, but I also increased the overlap on the intake cam just as the start of a basis to see how much I can gain out of it. And you can see right here, I picked up about 300 to 400 RPMs of spool. And if you're measuring torque, you know, at this fixed RPM at around 3,500 or so, it probably picked up another, probably at least 50, 60 foot-pounds of torque. You can see top end here that the power remains the same, and that's because I only tweaked the variable cam here on the spool up because I'm not trying to touch the top end yet. So we're going to move on to the exhaust cam gear and see if I can pick this spool up a little bit faster here, and then we're going to probably start moving on to tweaking some ignition timing. This last run I did hit my commanded power enrichment air fuel of 86 to 87 lambda. So my fuel curve's dialed in. So now it's just going to be a matter of tweaking the ignition timing, variable cam, and possibly some boost. So make some changes and do another pull. There's a fucking crazy difference. Crazy difference in spool. Wow. Yeah, I should go back over there. That's crazy. That's fucking insane. So the changes that I had just flashed and made, we just did a pull, and I focused on advancing the exhaust gear. So now I've added basically more overlap with advancing the intake gear and advancing the exhaust gear. And particularly this last flash, it was just advancing the exhaust gear. So you can see the change right here is now the difference of advancing the exhaust gear about another 10 degrees over where it was in the map. We can look at the difference between the first pull to this pull. So you can see this is the increase by adding more overlap, which now is spooling the turbo substantially faster, as you can see. You're talking, at 3,000 RPM, there's probably another 100 foot-pounds of torque. Another 100 foot-pounds of torque gain right in this area right about here. And I also, on the top end, I increased a little bit of boost, and I increased some ignition timing. And you can also see on the top end here, between the last flash and this flash, that I picked up a bit of torque, a bit of power. Air fuel's remaining the same. So at this point, I don't know how much more I can really gain in spool, but I also don't want to load the rods up in this engine, so I'm going to probably just tweak a little bit more in this mid-range and then back off, because stock connecting rods don't like to be loaded up at a very low RPM, which can make them break. This is a stock engine. It just has the upgraded ZZP cams. It also should be noted at this point that I'm also seeing in my data logs, fuel pressure is just slightly starting to fall off in this range. Not anything bad. I'm seeing about 2100, 2200 PSI, and at the very high RPM it starts rolling back to about 2050 PSI. So I'm starting to lose a little bit of fuel pressure, so I don't have a whole lot of headroom left. I could probably squeeze a little bit more power out, a little bit more boost. This car does have meth injection, which we might actually be enabling and turning on, so that'll give me a lot more room in the fuel system, and I can run a lot more boost and a lot more ignition timing and see substantially more power gains. So I'm going to play with ignition timing a little bit more and see if I can get some more power out of it, as well as the variable cam for this next pull. Right now I have no knock retard, air fuel looks good, and boost is nice and steady, so we'll make some more changes and see what we can find out in power. So I made a few more changes, and then we made another pull. The variable cam, I think, is exhausted as far as what it's going to get out of spool. I increased the overlap a little bit more on the exhaust cam, and I saw really no change in spool up, which is to be expected, because there's definitely a point of diminishing returns, and I think I've reached that with the cam. So leave the variable cam alone at this point. But this last pull, I also increased some ignition timing, and I also increased the desired air load, which will indirectly request more boost. So I'm trying to find the point at which the PCM will start retarding timing with knock. So I think I'm starting to get close to that point. This last pull, right around 35 to like 4,000 RPM, I started seeing a little bit of the knock retard, about 1 to 2 degree in this mid-range here, but up top I saw no knock retard. So with these direct injection engines and these LNF platforms specifically, there is the ability to tune out knock retard with the direct injection spray window. There's tables that are associated with that. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go, before I pull ignition timing out, I'm going to go in and start playing a little bit with the direct injection window angle tables, and I'm going to see if I can open up the window and get a little more fuel sprayed in that RPM range and load, and see if I can take care of the knock retard before I actually pull it out of the ignition table, because you can usually control combustion stability oftentimes with direct injection port angle mapping. So we're going to do that, leave everything else alone. Hopefully I can get rid of the knock retard. If not, then I have reached the point at which I've added too much ignition timing and I have to back it off, because we are on 93 octane. And if that is the case, then I think we're going to move on to doing the meth injection and seeing how much more we can get out of it. Yeah, we're going to do that and see the change. So I had flashed some changes and made another pull, and what I focused on with this this last pull was the direct injection window where it sprays. There's 2 maps in this PCM that associate with the full throttle high load portion of that that injection angle. So what I had initially seen, right around 3 to 35, I was seeing a bunch of knock retard, and I wasn't sure if it was, you know, if it was too much ignition timing or a combination of, you know, the injection angle needed to be tweaked. So before I touched the actual ignition timing, which you would do on a traditional port injection car, on the direct injection cars, you can actually change your window of spray. So what I did was I went into that particular RPM range and I requested a larger spray window in degrees, and I was able to completely eliminate the knock retard that I was seeing in that mid-range, and I picked up a little bit of power, but the graph is substantially smoother than it used to be, and there's probably not a whole lot more tweaking I can do on this as far as that injection angle, because I did command another 20 to 25 degrees. I don't want to get greedy. If I get too large of an angle, I can get misfire, I can get combustion instability and have issues. If I have too small of an angle, you can get a bunch of knock retard and get a bunch of other issues. So I think I'm going to leave it alone where it's at, but it is a substantial difference from the previous pool. The graph is much smoother. We're making a lot more torque, especially mid-range. But I think at this point, the pump gas is getting pretty damn close. I'm going to try to request a little more boost on the top end. The boost is dropping. It goes from 24, 25 pounds and it drops to about 22, 23. See if I can pick up the boost a little bit, maybe pick up the top end power. Right now we're currently at 410 torque and 350 wheel, which is, you know, definitely pretty decent. It does have an upgraded turbo. I said this in the beginning of the video. It has an EFR 6758, so it's not on a stock turbo, which is why the power is substantially higher than a stock turbo Cobalt SS. But another thing to note is this does have the upgraded Opal direct and fuel injections from a different car. So from a particular model, an Opal that has direct drop-in fit. They flow about 10 to 12% more, and it is giving the headroom we need on this particular fuel system to be able to squeeze this out. This does have the upgraded ZZP cam that's overdriving the direct injection fuel pump to allow the fuel pressure to remain, without dropping off too much. The fuel pressure right now, it's going up to about 2,200 psi, dropping to about roughly 2,100, 2,050 psi up top, and we still have fuel. The injector duty cycle on these is 28%, and if you're coming from a port engine, you're probably thinking that's so low. There's a ton of room. On the direct injection, your injection, your window to inject is much smaller, so the duty cycle isn't calculated the same. 50% duty cycle, if you're going to just throw out some rough numbers. 100% duty cycle, everybody knows, is bad on a port engine. 50% duty cycle on a direct injection engine is technically like bad. So we have headroom to make more power, but we are in 93 octane. I don't think I want to push this too much more. We do have the meth injection. I think it's going to be time to possibly turn on the meth injection and set that up and make some pulls and see what we can get out of it. Made a few more pulls. The last pull, I actually increased the boost. I asked for the more desired air load, and I got more boost, but I also got knock. So right now, I think I've reached the point of which 93 octane is safe. We're making about 405, 410 torque and about 350 wheel. At this point, there is a meth injection kit on this car. So I created one file for 93 octane, and now I'm going to create another file for the meth injection. We're going to turn the meth injection on, and then it's going to allow me to increase the boost, increase the timing, and have more headroom on the fuel system, because I'm going to take away fuel, because it's going to be spraying meth, when it gets the boost. So see how much we can make. I'm going to probably keep the torque around that point. I don't want to make a whole lot of torque on the stock bottom end and risk the chance of damaging it. So I'm going to try to keep the torque the same, but increase the top end. See if I can make 400, 420. I think that'd be a solid power level for this with the meth injection. So I'm going to set up the meth controller right now and start making some pulls, see what we can get out of it. I don't know what it's going to do when it sprays. It's going to be fucking a lot of meth. Okay. So I've made a few pulls with a meth injection. I've gotten the air fuel dialed in, and I've increased ignition timing, and I've increased boost. Now I'm running about 26 to 28 PSI, but I'm getting ignition misfire. So I think at this point the spark plugs need to be gapped, because I think there are just an out-of-the-box gaps on them. So we have new spark plugs. I'm gonna gap them tighter, put them in, make another pull, and hopefully we can clear the breakup issue. But right now it's already picked up substantial on the top end. It's almost 420 wheel with it breaking up. So it should pull some solid numbers once we get the misfire, the breakup straightened out. So we'll get these plugs in and make another pull. Decrease that gap a little bit. So I pulled the old spark plugs out. They were actually in good shape, but the plug gap was right around 35 to 36 thousandths. We're having ignition breakup, so I dropped them down another 10 thousandths, so they're around 24, 25 thousandths right now. I'm gonna put them in, not change anything, make another pull, see if it gets better. If it gets better, then I know it was just spark blowout. If it doesn't get better, then it could be something that I need to start tweaking with the direct injection window. There might be, I might have to increase or decrease the spray window. So we'll see if the plug gap fixes it first. If it does, great. If it doesn't, we're gonna have to visit some other stuff in the programming. That's crazy. So I just made our final pull with the meth injection turned on and all dialed in. We're seeing like about 410 torque and about 428 wheel. That's roughly about 26, 27 PSI boost. This does have a 3-bar map sensor. I'm not going to go any higher than that because it'll exceed what the map sensor can read. I'm also maxed out on my wastegate duty cycle for the boost solenoid, hitting right around 88, 89%. So I can't request any more boost from the system, from the desired air load tables, because I'm actually physically, mechanically maxed on what I can build for boost. It came in running from the other shop pretty horrible. It was pretty evident based on what I saw from all the mapping that they did. They didn't do a whole lot, and they sent them out the door 290. On pump gas, we were able to achieve right around 400 torque and 350 wheel. Meth injection, right around 410 torque, 430 wheel. So it's a substantial difference from the way it was. Also, it's substantially smoother now that I've played with the direct injection spray angle, spray window, increasing the variable cam. I've gotten a ton of response out of that. And I also was able to cure the really nasty misfire and part throttle misfire it had from having a combination of the wrong direction injection, window angle was wrong, very light load, very light throttle, as well as the variable cam. So the combination of all that, the car is completely transformed. I mean, it drives awesome, and now it's going to have the power to go pretty damn fast. I mean, this thing should fly. I think the owner is going to be really happy with it. Thanks for tuning into this episode of Daily Tune. Like, subscribe, comment, and click on the logo here to subscribe to our channel, and I'll see you in the next video.